Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, Britain's golden era of close engagement with China is over, according to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, but his diplomatic dance has not done enough to appease Conservative parliamentarians who fear Xi Jinping's global dominance. I'll be discussing all the fallout with our business correspondent Simon Pusey. And to japa or to stay put? That's the question causing serious debate on social media. Moronike Ajayi, MBE, the founder of Career Nugget, will be joining me in the studio to discuss the growing opportunities and support for Nigerians who have decided to pack up and start a new life here in Britain. Then later, I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. But first, let's start the show with a story that continues to make headlines here in the UK and across the world. Rishi Sunak has warned that the so-called golden era of UK relations with China is over. But the Prime Minister stopped short of describing the superpower as a threat. Alongside other allies in the West, the Conservative Party leader criticised China's handling of protests against Beijing's zero-COVID policy, including assaulting a BBC journalist. In words that have caused some concern among Tory MPs who are China hawks, Sunak said the West would collectively manage this sharpening competition, including with diplomacy and engagement.
We also need to evolve our approach to China. Now, let's be clear, the so-called golden era is over, along with the naive idea that trade would automatically lead to social and political reform. But nor should we rely on simplistic Cold War rhetoric. We recognise China poses a systemic challenge to our values and interests, a challenge that grows more acute as it moves towards even greater authoritarianism. Instead of listening to their people's protests, the Chinese government has chosen to crack down further, including by assaulting a BBC journalist. The media and our parliamentarians must be able to highlight these issues without sanction, including calling out abuses in Xinjiang and the curtailment of freedom in Hong Kong.
Well, earlier I was joined by our business correspondent Simon Pusey for more on this story. Simon, China has been trending again this week. We've seen some unprecedented uprisings due to Xi Jinping's zero-COVID policy, but then also Rishi Sunak has used his first public address about foreign policy to talk about China. I'm not sure whether or not he was sitting on the fence, whether he was appeasing those who obviously want him to take more of a hard line, or, as most people acknowledge, he has to kind of work with them because they are the world's biggest economy. If not now, they will certainly be soon. Yeah, well, he's in a very difficult position, as he is, with many different policies. William Hague, on one side, is very anti-China. He's one of many MPs who's actually been blacklisted, who's been sanctioned by the Chinese for things that they've said over the past few years. So you've got a whole swathe of the party that wants him to go further. And then, like he does with pretty much every policy move, he's got another part of the party that want him to appease China or say, you know, could be a big trading partner of ours and we shouldn't be going to. So he's trying to find the middle ground there. And yeah, we've had these huge protests, which is very, very rare in China because mass gatherings that are not official or are not organised are illegal. And so you can be put in prison, people do disappear, people are under house arrest and things like that. And there's no obvious opposition to Xi Jinping. That there is very much kind of official and sort of above board and basically working with him. So it's very brave for people to go out onto the streets. What we've seen in Shanghai and Guangzhou over the last few days is really, really interesting. And it's very, very different to everything we've seen in China in the past few decades, really. And the problem is this zero COVID policy, which I think most Chinese actually think isn't working. You know, cases are rising. If cases weren't rising, I think they'd be understanding because the official figures there are hilariously low. I think, you know, most people think those aren't the real figures. Yeah. But, you know, 5,000 deaths for a country that size is amazing, given the virus came from there in the first place. So I think if the numbers were not rising, then people would be much more understanding. But COVID cases are rising and there are more lockdowns, and it just seems like there's going to be endless lockdowns there. led to the death, didn't it, of 10?
Well, these are serious lockdowns. Yeah, exactly. They often weld the doors shut of quarantine hotels to make sure people literally can't get out. So even for Chinese people that are not used to having necessarily human rights or freedoms in the same way that we do, they're getting upset about it. And so to come out onto the streets, that's a really big thing. And it has actually probably caused change. At the moment, they've got a shift in COVID stance in Guangzhou and Shanghai. Cities that had seen rising cases are still taking down lockdown measures now. And I think Xi Jinping was put in a position where they were like, well, this is going to spread and this is going to continue. And so we need to do something. We need to show that we are listening a little bit. So at least that has happened. But, there's things like the football crowds on TV. We've had that sort of, that went viral this week as well, of Chinese people seeing football crowds in the World Cup maskless. And so CCTV decided to pause or delay their feed and instead cover up those pictures with just pictures of players on the pitch, because they're trying to, so they're constantly battling this thing where people in China are saying, hey, how is the rest of the world, not locked down and not wearing masks?
Living with COVID.
Exactly, yeah. And Xi Jinping went off to the G7 not too long ago.
Yeah.
He was maskless, so I think they're always battling that. But then, other things can happen. You've got Jiang Zemin, their president from just after Tiananmen Square. He died recently, and so then all the attention shifts to him, and there was a huge outpouring on TV and things. So I think this is something that might keep bubbling away, that the authorities need to look at. But it is pretty massive when people in China protest. That's sort of unprecedented, nothing we've really seen before. So it'll be interesting. We'll sort of keep tabs on that as the days and weeks go on. Yeah,
just very briefly, do you think, seeing these protests has perhaps changed what Rishi was going to say at the Lord Mayor's banquet?
Well, it certainly gave him a peg, didn't it? A sort of news angle to go for and to say, well, this is why I'm saying this now. He was very hard on China in his leadership campaign.
Absolutely.
He said...
they're a threat.
Exactly. He said slightly different rhetoric to what he actually came out with, but that's often the way, isn't it? When you're
campaigning is different than governing.
Exactly, and then you have to sort of tread the line. So I think he understands that China could be a good trading partner. There's lots of things, but you need to tread very carefully because their values are very different to ours, certainly when it comes to human rights. But yeah, I think certainly seeing those protests was a smart move on his part to say, well, this is why we're now talking about this, as opposed to just coming out randomly and saying it, because he was at least appearing to be on the side of the people and saying that the Chinese authorities should listen to the people. Yes. And zero COVID is certainly not a policy that we're taking, no one else really taking it ever anywhere in the world. And I think him and his ministers were saying China should listen to their people.
Yes, the opposition still deem Rishi as weak, and weak on China too. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Now to our next topic. A new British television series depicting the lives of the wealthy stars none other than Big Brother Africa star Kid Wire. The show is being fronted by Hollywood sensation Brian Cox and shines a spotlight on how different people in the country are coping with the cost of living crisis. While the price of a loaf of bread may not be an issue to Kid Wire, the reality sensation has had to navigate a multitude of other issues. Earlier, he joined me in the studio for an insightful chat. Kid Wire, thank you so much for joining me in the Channels Business Global studio. I've got to say, I'm a little bit starstruck.
Stop it.
I am, because you are a big deal. You're a major deal. I'm sure that millions of our viewers watching right now will be familiar with you. And it's quite interesting because how I perceive you, and I think how our viewers perceive you, will be completely different.
Yep.
You are an entrepreneur, you are a gentleman, you are paving the way for so many young people, not just in Britain, but across Nigeria. So I do want to say that.
Thanks so
how
much.
Your persona on social media is not necessarily who you are. And I think that is probably going to be depicted in a new Channel 5 docu-series, which is being fronted by also a big star, a Hollywood star, Brian Cox. He is Scottish born, but he's looking at how the other half live. Tell me about how you got involved and what side of Kid Wire will be showed on that.
First of all, oh my God, Brian. Working with Brian is the most special thing. And it's funny because I'm a big believer in manifestation of the universe's energy. Prior to I got this call up, I was watching his show. He's got the biggest show in America on HBO. It's won a Golden Globe, 4 Emmys. It's called Succession. I'm a huge fan of that show. So prior to this, I was watching the show, binge watching it, right? And after I finished the show, I think about 3 weeks later, the email came in from one of the biggest production companies, Fremantle and Naked in UK. They emailed me and said, we absolutely loved you in High Life. We loved your personality. You're so humble. And Brian really wants to work with you. And we've got this show coming up. So when I saw it, because they put his name Brian Cox, when I saw it, I had to Google and double check about 100 times to make sure it's that Brian Cox, because I've just finished watching the show and I couldn't believe it. I didn't even read the whole document. When I saw Brian Cox new documentary show, I was like, yes, set up a Zoom call. So I spoke to them and, you know, that's how it happened. But they reached out to me and it was just amazing working with him.
It has been amazing. I think you have come across really well. I've got to say, though, it is talking about the divide in society. You know, some figures that we discuss extensively from this studio is cost of living crisis. You know, the fact that people are having to perhaps skip meals so that they can pay their rent. Are you aware of the deepening divide between those who do have and those who don't have, not just in Nigeria where we know it's acute, but it's also happening in the UK too?
I mean, I'm absolutely aware of it. And that's kind of the reason why I took myself out of Nigeria, because my life in Nigeria is very much, you know, of the people that haves.
You're part of the elite.
Yes, in Nigeria, right? So me coming to UK is almost like starting from the ground, trying to work my way up to some respect. So I'm very aware of what's going on. And my mother really instills that part of emotion in me to be aware of what's happening. And of course, going to boarding school as well allowed me to mix with different kind of people. And, you know, people who know me very well, I've never been a person that flaunts luxury in their face. If anyone who's met me face to face...
This is an expensive jacket.
It's a comfortable jacket in a very
We don't have
day.
smell-o-vision as well, so can't smell the wealth, but yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, I mean, anyone who meets me, it's kind of like, kid's very humble, he's very down to earth, he doesn't throw it in your face. I don't wear watches, I don't wear expensive jewelry. It's kind of what you see is what you get. So I'm very aware, I've always been aware, and I've always resonated with people who are less than me, because I've always had them around me. I've never looked at you and judged you on what you have. You know, you can come to my table, we can eat, we can drink, we can break bread, and I'll treat you the same way that I treat everyone else. But I am seriously aware of it, and I talk about it a lot on my social media platforms about the divide, and that's kind of why I did the show, because it's such an important topic, especially with what we're going through now, coming to a recession. It was very important to be part of that and to shine light on how important it is and the divide between the haves and the haves not.
Where can we watch your new reality TV show, and how can we stay on top of what you're doing? I know you've got like 2 million or so followers, but how can we keep involved?
So my show, Channel 5.
It's the British broadcaster.
Yes, you can watch it on My 5, which is basically online on Channel 5. To keep in touch with me, look, follow my social media profiles, KidY on Instagram, Real KidY on Twitter, and kind of just see what I'm doing on a daily basis. I'm always coming out with new stuff. I've got amazing projects coming up. And yeah, you know, social media and my business as well, Kid W & Co. We're doing a lot of things here with Nigeria, bringing them to UK, working with international brands, trying to bridge the gap between Africa and UK. So you can follow us.
And the mental health, I think the mental health issue is really, really important.
Absolutely.
Please, 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 we want to follow that journey and see how many young boys in the UK stop them from, you know, carrying knives.
Yes, yes.
And can try and emulate your lifestyle in an appropriate manner. KidY, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up on Channel's Business Global, I'll be speaking with Morenike Ajayi, MBE, the founder of Career Nuggets, about the vast opportunities available to Nigerians who are hoping to settle here in Britain. And I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. In a moment, I'll be speaking with Morenike Ajayi, MBE, the founder of Career Nuggets, about the vast opportunities available to Nigerians who are hoping to settle here in Britain. But until then, here's a breakdown of the biggest business news stories of the week. According to new data from Action Fraud, nearly £500 million has been lost to cryptocurrency scams over the past 3 years. Between 2021 and 2022, scammers raked in £226 million. This is up from £171 million in the previous period. The revelation follows the recent collapse of the world's second largest cryptocurrency exchange, FTX, which sent shockwaves through the crypto market. The UK's Financial Ombudsman Service has warned that the cost of living crisis could give rise to more vulnerable consumers falling victim to crypto fraud. US regulators have banned the sale and import of new Huawei and ZTE electronics, claiming they pose a serious security risk to the country. The restrictions are just the latest sanctions America has imposed upon Chinese tech firms following spying concerns that officials have become increasingly wary of in recent years. The ban is not retroactive, so the firm can continue to sell products previously approved for purchase in America. Huawei and others have previously denied supplying data to the Chinese government. Staying with China, fresh data has revealed that the country's economy is showing further signs of weakness. PMI recordings for both factory output and the services industry remained under the benchmark of 50 for the month of November, indicating a contraction in the sectors. The data released by the country's National Bureau of Statistics comes amid a crisis of nationwide protests and frustration surrounding the region's controversial COVID-19 containment policy. Now to our final topic. The term "japa," which is Yoruba slang for run, flee or escape, has become a major talking point in households and across social media throughout this year, as Nigerians who have decided to start a new life abroad have been sharing their personal experience of what life is like living in the so-called West. As to be expected, not all of these experiences are positive, and migrants are often left feeling ostracised, undervalued and stigmatised in their newfound roles. Help is at hand, however, via a leading social enterprise called Career Nuggets. The group was created to inform, educate and inspire people from the Black minority ethnic community to take their careers to the next level. Earlier, I was joined by the group's founder, Moronike Ajayi, MBE. Moronike Ajayi,
Hello.
MBE.
Hello, Juliana.
It is a pleasure to have you in the studio. I do want to talk about Career Nuggets, but considering you were given an honorary title by Her Majesty the Queen before she passed earlier this year, I think we've got to start there because that is absolutely massive. It's huge. Talk to me very briefly, if you can, how that came about, when you got the acknowledgement letter saying that you would be invited to the palace, and what this means.
I would say it was just such, I can't even explain the emotions, but being so excited and you just feel rewarded that somebody's noticed what you've been doing over the years. But most importantly, I just felt that I'm representing women, my community, for all the work we're doing. There's so many others doing so much, but to get that, I believe it's opened doors to many others. So I was really delighted. The whole thing though, when the letter, so they give you like 2 weeks before the actual day is announced, but you're not meant to say a word.
Wow.
And my husband was the one that received the letter.
Oh my goodness.
And he called me at work. You can imagine what I did. I screamed and everybody's like, what happened? But I'm not meant to say anything. Yeah. But it was such a delightful and memorable experience.
Yeah, it's really inspiring, and I can speak on behalf of the whole Nigerian community, not just in the UK, but in Nigeria. We are all very proud of you, and it's because of your work with Career Nuggets. And that's what I want to talk about, because everyone has an opinion about the whole Japa experience, and we are seeing that so many Nigerians are taken to social media saying that, you know, don't leave the borders. It's not as great as you expect. Is this one of the reasons why you started Career Nuggets? Because you did want to give Nigerians living in Britain a second chance to renew their life and kickstart a flourishing career?
Absolutely. So just a little bit about Career Nuggets. We are a career development support hub for members of the Black community. And that was really stemmed from I was working as an accountant. I'm still working as an accountant. And as you start, when you got a professional degree, it kind of opens the door, you start. But you're like the junior in the organization. As you move up in the ladder, career ladder, you find that the diversity is not there. It's just one color. And Career Nuggets is set up to support members of the Black community to progress in their career. So it's for anybody stuck or at a crossroad, not sure what to do, and working. So it's not for, so really we say from age 25 and above. And in terms of the Japa experience, yes, people are coming, but one thing I do want to say is, it's not land of milk and honey where everything is at your feet. You have to work hard for it. You have to be committed, and you must be willing to make certain choices. You might have been a manager or a director where you're coming from, but some decisions might be you start afresh, but you can progress speedily. How? If you get the right support. That's what we do in Career Nuggets. We provide mentors. We provide an academy that takes you through soft skills. So having a degree is not enough in this country. It's how you sell yourself, how visible you are, how you communicate. And the language is different, that I can guarantee. So we support people through interviews. We give people, help them review their CVs. Even when you're in the job, we give you support on how do you present yourself, how do you position yourself, and how do you build that credibility? Because the only thing that will keep you in the job is credibility. So there are 3 things I would say people need to, work on if you intend to come here. You need to surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
Positivity is important. Yeah. You must be prepared to think about how you can add value to wherever you're going. Yeah. And you must be prepared to put in the hard work. Absolutely. With determination. There will be a lot of knockbacks, a lot of setbacks. I've gone through that in my career. I didn't just start out as an accountant. I remember working in Woolworth, for anybody that remembers Woolworth, and then studying in the evening. But when you're focused and you have the right support, you'll get to the dream that you so desire in your career.
Thank you for highlighting those really important parts, actually. And I know Career Nuggets have been doing this so successfully. Channels Business Global had exclusive access to last year's event, which we are showing those pictures now.
Yes.
Really glitz and glamour.
That's
lots
right.
of positive energy in
Correct.
the room. And clearly Career Nuggets is doing something quite unique, because there are so many consultancy services online. We've all seen them, people offering to tweak your CV, networking parties where you can meet the great and good of society, but not actually taking you through step by step.
Correct.
So what are some of these steps that you take people through, particularly soft skills? Because I think that is important. The language is different. I know Nigeria and Britain do share a strong history, but things work differently here, don't they?
Things work differently. Talking on the language, for example, a lot of people would say, oh, I'm a good team worker. But some organizations don't use that word. They use collaboration. So we work with people to understand what are the values, what's the culture of that organization, so that you can then fit in. So we work closely with individuals. So don't just pack you in a group. We have room for group events, but we work one-on-one, and we partner people with mentors in a similar field that people are willing to transition into or progress into. So we're very passionate, and we don't drop people. We work with you till the end. So far, you give us your time and you're willing to work hard. We're all volunteers. I work with 40 other mentors, but we're passionate about supporting people and seeing the landscape of the workplace change, and seeing more members of the Black community in influential positions so that they can put the ladder down for others to climb.
Absolutely, that's wonderful. I know that you have a graduation ceremony taking place again this weekend. I know Channels Business Global again have some exclusive access to that. I know there are so many viewers that are watching and think, how can I get involved? I do want to a second chance or a third chance or a fourth opportunity. I do want to, make sure that I am speaking with the right people. How do they get involved with Career Nuggets?
So the very first thing you need to do is to go to our website, www.careernuggets.tv. You can connect with me, Morenike Ajayi, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and also follow Career Nuggets, and we will respond accordingly. Our academy kicks off in January, the last week in January. I think it's 25th of January. And just follow us, and you'll be able to be informed with all the information we have. Yes, you spoke about our soiree, which is this weekend. We're sold out, so unfortunately nobody will be able to get any tickets. So we're expecting about 300 people. But we sold out 6 weeks before, but we always do this every year. So there is another opportunity, and we have other events through the year. So just follow us online.
Morenike Ajayi, MBE.
Thank you so much,
founder of Career Nuggets. The list could go on and on and on, but I think we could stick with that one.
Yes,
Thank you so much for joining me in the studio.
Thank you for having me, Juliana.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.